Hello and welcome to the final session of our Career Comeback webinar series. I'm Zoe, I'm the Programme Design Manager at the CIPD Trust, and sharing the expertise of people that work in HR is kind of a key part of what we look for in the CIPD Trust. That's what we do. And in these webinars, we aim to give you a bit of a behind the scenes look into the recruitment process and what that means for you as someone who's returning to work after not having worked for a while. So the CIPD Trust was set up to work with HR professionals to tackle barriers to work. We run programs where HR people can volunteer their skills and experience to help people who are looking for work. And that could be working with someone one-to-one, looking at their specific challenges around getting into work, or it could be something like these webinars where we've got people sharing general tips and advice. We also provide guidance for people working in human resources to make changes to their own workplaces that will remove some of those barriers to work for specific groups, such as refugees or people with convictions. So I've got a couple of housekeeping things to begin with. We're recording this session, but cameras and microphones have been disabled, so no attendees will appear on the recording. Please use the chat to ask questions and make comments. Just be aware that we might read those out on the recording. My colleague Ali will be posting useful tips and links in the chat. So we'll be talking through questions that were submitted when people registered. So hopefully you submitted a question when you signed up. We've had hundreds of questions submitted, so we won't be able to answer every single question, but we've picked a selection. And if we have time, we will take questions from the chat. So share any questions that you might have. So before we get going with the webinar itself, I just wanted to tell you about our mentoring program, Bridging the Gap. So hopefully today's session will give you lots of tips and ideas, but if you're feeling like you would benefit from some one-to-one support with your job search, then Bridging the Gap is for you. It's a 6-month mentoring program to help people who have had some time not working. We'll match you with a mentor who works in HR and knows all the ins and outs of recruitment and work, and they'll work with you over video calls for 6 months to help you take the next step in your job search. So that could be looking at your CV and helping with applications, or it could be helping you to feel a bit less lost or rethink your approach. Everyone needs help to find work. And that could be support from your friends and family, it could be your professional network, or it could be from one of our mentors. So if you're interested, I'll pop a link in the chat, or just search for CIPD Trust Bridging the Gap. So today we're talking about finding work that works for you. And looking for work when you're not working can be really hard. And it's very easy to fall into a trap of thinking that any job will do. And if you've been out of work for a while, it can be easy to forget what the day-to-day reality of work is like. And things have changed, of course. The nature of the job market at the moment can make it seem like you have to take anything that's offered to you. And there's also the reality of your financial situation. We all need to work to pay the bills. And all of those factors make it quite easy to make a decision that results in you burning out in a job quickly and needing to start again looking for work. So we're going to talk about some of the ways that you could avoid that. And before we start, I just really quickly wanted to talk about stress. We had a lot of questions about kind of stress and burnout. So I thought I'd just start with a little thing about that. So imagine that you have a bucket, and that everything that causes you stress fills up that bucket with water. And those will be different things for everyone. So it might be things like financial worries, having too much work, not having enough work, responsibilities at home, external events. What causes you stress is unique to you. And how much stress each of those things causes you is also unique to you. And everyone also has different limits to how much stress they can tolerate. So if we go back to our bucket, everyone has a different size bucket, and there will be different amounts of stress will make that bucket overflow. And finally, there are ways to empty your bucket. So they're called taps in the proper analogy. So those can be things like relaxation, talking to people you trust, doing things you enjoy. Everyone's got different ways of emptying their bucket. But it's important to recognise what those are for you and make sure that you protect time for that. And the crucial thing to remember is that some stress is normal. So you always have water going into the bucket and you'll always be taking it out. That's just a normal part of life. And sometimes that can be really beneficial as well. That's just part of kind of what drives you, what keeps you going. So it's just as important to think about what relieves that stress as what causes it. And when you're thinking about big changes, like going back to work, it's important to think about that bucket and what fills it up and what empties it and how you're going to manage those things. So to talk through some of the detail, we've got a fantastic panel today. And we've also got my fantastic co-chair, Rava, who's going to be asking them questions. So let's hear from everyone now. Rava, do you want to kick us off by introducing yourself?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Zoe. So my name is Reva Gupta and I'll be co-chairing this with Zoe. And I volunteer with the CIPD Central London branch. And through that, I found Zoe and this amazing platform and this amazing sessions that we do. So without further ado, should I just open the floor and let our panelists introduce themselves? So if you just want to kick off, Tom, then we can go from there.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So my name's Tom Neachell. I work for Greenfolk. We are a kind of recruitment and consultancy company, but I've only been in the dark side of recruitment for the kind of past 3 years. Previously, I was an internal HR BP for an international manufacturing group. So I've seen both sides of the line. I understand what it's like to be a recruiter out there, obviously working with people that are applying, as well as being on the internal side of seeing how it all works internally. Looking forward to the chat.
Perfect. Wonderful. And now let's hear from Karima.
Hi, so my name is Karima Walter-Stroud. I've been working in HR or people programs now for the past few years. I'm currently working in an in-house role as Imagination's Head of Employee Experience, so really focusing on HR operations, systems and programs. But prior to that, I've been in HR business partner roles and senior kind of HR ops roles. And in some companies, I've been looking after the recruitment process as well. So I really understand that job search and difficulties and challenges there. And I've also faced challenges in my own career where I've had to look for roles that have more flexibility. So I understand it from that perspective as well. So really keen to share in this chat.
Wonderful. I'm very excited to hear from you. And last but not the least, can we hear from Matthew? If you want to introduce yourself, please.
Yep. So hi, everyone. My name is Matt Ponsford. I work as a strategic HR business partner for a charity called Fitzroy. We work in the adult social care sector, looking after adults with learning disabilities, mental health and autism. And I cover all things HR, strategically or not, and loads and loads of recruitment. So lots of experience throughout.
Wonderful. So we've got a really diverse panel, everyone bringing their own experience and a lot to share. So without further ado, should we jump into the questions then? All right.
I think actually, Rava, I think we've got a question just for our attendees to start off.
Wonderful.
So if we could get everyone in the chat just to tell us what does balance mean to you? We kind of we wanted to kick this off just by having a good kind of little think about what that actually means in terms of you and what you experience. And I guess, Matt, we were just talking about this beforehand. So do you want to tell me a little bit about what balance means to you specifically?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, balance is really relevant to different stages of your life. So what balance might be as a new starter in your career is very different to what balance might be mid-career if you're more senior in an organisation or more junior. And also the part of your life that you're in. So, for example, if you're a new parent, it might be flexibility in hours, might mean that there's balance there. Maybe if you're a bit further into your career, a mentoring opportunity is more important for you. But for me, definitely throughout my career in HR, what I've found is the ability to be able to switch off at the end of the day, the ability to finish your work day and not dwell on maybe difficult conversations you've had or difficult decisions you've been involved in is key for me at this moment in my life. However, 10 years ago, that wouldn't have been the case. 10 years ago, it might have been more around actually what benefits am I getting? Do they impact the balance of my work-life balance? For me, definitely, it's, I suppose, around what's non-negotiable for you and understanding that quite early on. But again, that will change depending on what part of your life you're in. What is non-negotiable at the age of 21 is very different to the age of 45. And again, at the age of 57, there'll be very, very different approaches that you take, I suppose, to what your balance will be at that stage. Yeah,
and I'm absolutely with you about being able to switch off work and then work is finished. That's a big one for me, definitely. We've had some answers in the chat. So someone said flexible time, not feeling burnt out. I think that's really important. Someone else has said taking the time to understand how various parts of your life are impacting one another, which I think is really important as well. Like when things are busy at home, sometimes that balance with work can shift, can't it? I moved house recently, and I know all my colleagues are absolutely sick of me talking about it and like going, "Oh, I'm like I can't think about anything else." So yeah, definitely. And someone has said that all the plates are spinning well and none are dropping, work and home. Yeah, I think again it's that. Yeah, we've also got managing time and energy between work responsibilities. Someone has put balance to me as ensuring fairness, equity, and sustainable management of resources. I think that's also a big thing, that feeling of fairness can really impact how you feel about balance. What else have we got? Yeah, work not negatively affecting your personal life. Again, I think that can shift over your career. Karima, what about you? Do you have any thoughts? What does balance mean to you?
Yeah, I think it definitely can shift over the course of your career for sure. I think it's definitely not something that's age dependent. You know, life happens to everyone. You know, you can have care commitments, looking after an unwell relative. Perhaps you have health problems that suddenly occur yourself. So I think it's really about having that mindset of being able to adapt around challenges that we face in life. And then also in terms of, you know, the day-to-day in your role, balance is important there, even if, you know, chaotic things aren't happening outside the realm of work. So, you know, just making sure that actually your workload is suitable and adequate so that you're not stressing too much beyond that work day. So I think similar, you know, echoing similar thoughts to Matthew there, in that it can depend on the various situations going on in your life, but also regardless of what's going on in your life, everyone has that right to enjoy their work and to not feel overly stressed by their workload.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that Fiona in the chat has said balance is the agency to manage my own energy levels, setting boundaries, and the ability to kind of manage stress, which I think is really interesting, because I think agency can be a huge thing, can't it? If you feel in control, you can kind of manage quite a lot more than if you feel like things are being put on you. So yeah, super interesting. Right. Well, thank you all for answering. It was really, really helpful. Right, Raver, I will hand back to you to begin the questions.
Perfect. I think it was really interesting. Lots of thoughts about what balance means and lots of common themes about preventing burnout and just balancing your different work-life things. So lovely. Wrapping that up, we will just dive into the questions that we've got from our audience. Really interesting questions. So the first one is around the first question, I'll read it out, says, our first question is about how to explain a long career gap, say being out of work for 6 years, to a new employer. So Tom, let's start with you. From your recruiter perspective, how should candidates present this gap?
With honesty is number one. If you have been out of whichever game you're in for 6 years, you need to be upfront and honest about it. Anything on your profile that might be seen as a negative or a question, you need to address it first. You could have the most stunning career history before that, but it's the first thing people see. They want to know why. And one of the things we always talk a lot about is you need to answer the whys when you're given a chance to. When you apply for something, when you give your CV to somebody, you're being given a chance to answer your whys then. Don't leave it back. Don't try and circumvent it. Be honest, be open. Say, this is my plan to get back into work. This is what I want to be doing. This is what I can do. A lot of the issues that we see is people aren't getting the phone call to say, oh, why is the last job on your CV in 2019 and 2018? You use the application as the opportunity to answer the question that people are going to ask. There is no getting around it. You've been out of work for 6 years. Talk about it, own it, and have a plan when somebody asks you. This is going to be hard. You're going to go from 0 to 100 very quickly. You're stepping back into full-time work. You need your plan. You need to be able to answer that to a prospective employer with the confidence to say, this is what I'm going to do. I know it's going to be difficult. I know it's a challenge. I know I'm a risk, but I'm worth it. So very much take any opportunity you can to answer the whys first.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important. It's a good point about being honest. It also sets a good impression. It builds that relationship and helps you portray yourself better moving forward. So those are excellent points. And Karima, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think as well, it's important not just to wait for the opportunity to be asked questions around that gap, proactively preempt that question by when you contact that employer, be it in the form of your CV and cover letter, or I'm a great advocate of doing things a bit outside of the box. Pick up the phone, call the recruiter. If there's an email in the application where it says, if you have any further questions, email this person. When you're making that contact, that's a great time to be able to address that gap. And normally during a gap, you're not just doing absolutely nothing. There's normally something that you're doing that's actually, in relation to your work and developing that skill set. Even if it is, for example, in a parenting role, you'll still be doing some project management tasks, scheduling. So trying to link the fact that you have still been developing your skills during that gap, I think is a great way to, answer and respond to any concerns around your ability to be able to pick up that fast-paced nature of a role that you'd be able to go into.
Perfect. I think that's a very strong point about being able to demonstrate your transferable skills from personal life into your professional life. So thank you both. Great advice. Moving on to the next question. We have a question that says, if you need to get a job immediately, is it okay to settle for any job? And if I do so, will it affect my experience in trying to secure senior manager role? And I will kick this off with Matthew, if you want to explain your view on how this affects your long-term progression.
Yeah, I think it very much depends on your own situation. So sometimes there is no choice but to take a job because you need a job and you need the income from it. However, what I would always suggest is, what is your long-term goal? So is taking a valid, relevant, short-term job, maybe a temporary contract to get to your future goal, the right thing to do? I suggest it's going to enhance your experience. It's going to look good on your CV because you've been proactive and it is relevant. It also helps you, I suppose, maintain your professional brand to say, I've come back into the workplace, or I've needed to get a role. I've been proactive in doing that. I have sought out a job and made it work for me. Some examples might be if there's a temporary admin role, for example. In any role that you take these days, being able to have digital HR skills, to understand the impact of AI, to understand the impact of data generally is really important. And you can get that experience at maybe a lower level job or a temporary job that you might not have considered beforehand. The other thing to consider, I suppose, is if you've been offered maybe a job that you wouldn't normally go for, is it in the right organisation? It's very easy to transition between jobs once you've got a foot in the door. So thinking about maybe a lower level job or maybe a job that you wouldn't normally go for, but it gives you that launch pad and that networking ability to then move into maybe a different role within that situation. What I have seen recently is quite a lot of people trying before they buy. So a series of maybe short-term contracts. Now, some employers would say that shows maybe that they don't know what they want to do. From my perspective, I think actually what it shows is that you have integrated yourself into new organisations quickly. You can demonstrate your impact there, hopefully, in an interview or on your CV. And then that gives you the starting point, I suppose, for a longer career with that experience that you bring with you. So I don't always see it as a negative, personally.
Mm-hmm. And I like that ideology of trying before you buy. I think that just shows that, you can pick up so many different skills, trying different roles, and this can really help you achieve your long-term goals. So that's absolutely right. And Karima, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, I think thinking about what Matthew was saying about short-term contracts and interim roles, I mean, I think a lot of employers are going for that option now because there is a bit of a reluctance and fear to hire for permanent roles these days. People are quite cautious now. So the fact that the market is reflecting that availability of these interim contracts or these short-term roles, if you're presenting yourself for a new opportunity, and you explain that to them, what you've noticed in the market and how you've not seen that as a negative, but actually as a positive. It's about really spinning whatever could be deemed as a negative as something that is actually an opportunity. So, for example, if you've been doing a few short-term contracts, you could say, well, actually, I gain exposure in this industry, in that sector, and that would really enable me to thrive in this role because I've learned X, Y, Z. So actually, I'm a candidate that could be quite unique because I've seen a lot more than the average candidate because I've had that exposure across various sectors and industries. So you want to spin it as something positive and make them think, oh, okay, we haven't considered someone like you, but actually maybe we should.
That's really encouraging to hear that it's all about how you position yourself, what is your strategy, and spinning the mindset instead of looking at it as a negative thing, looking at it from a positive angle. So that's really encouraging to know. Thank you, Karima. And we've got another really great question here. And that says, how do you balance asking for flexibility as a parent of a young child without putting prospective employers off? So Tom, from a recruiter's perspective, how does this work?
Well, not just from a recruiter's perspective. I've got a 3 and a 5-year-old. I had 2 boys 15 months apart from each other during COVID. And I was in a very busy HR role at the time, at a big manufacturing group. And I realised that that wasn't going to suit being a young dad of 2 under 2. That was the reason I moved from internal HR to external recruitment, for the flexibility of what my role offers me now. I can do the school drop off. I can leave when I need to go and see carol recitals. I can do all the things that are my absolute non-negotiables at the moment, because I realised where I was in my career mattered slightly less than where I wanted to be as a father. In terms of how do you actually position that? How do you kind of get that across to a potential employer? Again, it's something that you need to prioritise in your mind of. Not everybody has got the flexibility in their role as it is today to make it work for them. Is there something you can do to make your life more flexible, or is there something you can do to make your job more flexible? There is always going to be non-negotiable roles where you can't be a policeman and say, oh, sorry, I'm going to go and pick my kids up. That doesn't mean you should stop being a policeman. It should be how do you find that flexibility and really help kind of discuss it with people. And I think part of it, again, not going back to the previous point, but you need to be honest about it. When I was thinking about a move, the first thing I was saying was, I've got 2 kids under 2. If they've had a bad night's sleep, if my wife's sick, I won't be here tomorrow. You've got to make clear that from the start that is your situation, and make clear to employers what you value. Because if you go in saying, oh yeah, I can do that, and you start dropping more and more at home, that stress, that burnout is going to build up a lot quicker behind you. So it's setting your stall out, and it's back to being honest with them and saying, this is what I need as a non-negotiable. This is where I can have flexibility. This is what I can do extra in the evenings, or can come in early, or I can do more around it. But be upfront and discuss it. Don't hide from being a parent. It's the best thing in the world.
Right. Yeah. Be proud, own it, and have the conversation, open conversation, isn't it? Yeah. And Matthew, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I sort of echo what Tom said. I think it's very much around, it is a two-way street. So there is negotiation there potentially. If you're already in a role, it's the same situation. It's maybe a flexible working request. It's having that two-way conversation. But when applying, I would definitely think about who you'd like to work for, who is well known as having good family-friendly policies. I work for a charity, and you might not get paid the highest salary, but generally it's a lot more flexible in regards to work-life balance and being able to do those school drop-offs, pickups, whatever it might be. Local authorities are similar. Government bodies are quite similar in that there is generally a bit more flexibility there. So if you're not getting the success maybe that you'd like to when applying to maybe the corporate world or to for-profit organisations, have a think maybe outside the box about who might be able to accommodate that. And I suppose that leads to, what are your non-negotiables? Could you take maybe a lower salary to work in an organisation that can accommodate that? So is it all about the money? Is it all about the flexibility? What is your lead into applying for roles, I suppose?
Yeah, so like you said, works both ways. So even people who are applying for jobs need to kind of take a step back and look at what their priorities are and how much can be negotiable, what cannot be negotiable. So I think that's really important. And I think this is really assuring for all our parents who are attending this session today. So wonderful advices from everyone, really positive, really encouraging. And before I carry on with more questions, because we've got lots of interesting questions, but before we move on, I think we have a second poll.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think we've got another question for the chat. So we've been talking a lot about kind of the things to look for in roles. So I guess we wanted to find out from you and our audience, what is it that you value from work? And I guess beyond the obvious of a salary, what are the things that you value? Tom, do you want to tell us a bit? I mean, I think you've already covered this a little bit, but maybe a bit more about what it is that you value in your work?
Yeah, absolutely. Fairness is number one. Especially, I now exist in a kind of commission-led world where it's a sales environment. It was completely new to me 3 years ago. But the main element of what I've come reflecting this and previous roles and what I see is people want fairness. Now, that could be fairness in pay, fairness in flexibility, fairness in opportunity. My biggest value is I know I get a fair deal from where I am now. I don't think I do, and that sometimes gets you past the longer days you have to do or answering a phone in the evening, because you know that give and take is fair. And there's a lot that can be said in terms of it's not a written benefit. It's not something you see on you get free parking and everything. I work for an employer who is ultimately fair with me. And that gives me the kind of that entrusts me with what I can go off and do great with. So yeah, 100% fairness is my value.
Yeah, that's great. And I think so definitely resonates. And I think I've experienced situations where people feel that their work is unfair in some way, and that often just leads to a complete breakdown in trust. And I think then everything becomes part of the kind of unfair picture. So yeah, I think that's definitely super important. I can see that we've got in the chat trust from managers, which I think is also very resonant, as well as feeling valued. Philip said interaction with other people in a sense of shared purpose. I definitely resonate with that. I think interaction with other people is kind of really high on my list. Karima, what about you? What do you value in work?
I think definitely for me it would be autonomy. Be that over the projects that I work across, so that I can have that ability to be creative and to develop new ideas, or even autonomy over my own schedule, not to feel like I'm being micromanaged, or, the feel like if I need to run an errand during the day or go to some sort of appointment, that's not even a question. It's not a problem at all. So sort of similar to fairness, but I feel like autonomy, I feel like that word empowers me a bit more, having that control over my own schedule. And I think a lot of employers these days, they see that that's important for employees. They want to feel like, they're being trusted to deliver their work. And if they need to do something outside of the realm of work, within work hours, every now and again, that's fine.
Yeah, great. I think that is super important. We're seeing fairness come up a lot in the chat. So obviously you've hit a bit of a kind of nail on the head there, Tom. But yeah, I can also see, although I can't see autonomy specifically, I can see several related things around feeling valued and flexibility and being trusted. I think all of those things kind of go in with that kind of autonomy bit. Someone's put, this is from Jennifer, appreciation that I am a human with individual needs. I think that's super important and kind of easy to overlook. What about you, Matthew? What do you value in work?
I mean, for me, I'm slightly older, maybe. So things that matter to me is the organisation I work for. Do I have a link with my personal values in what I'm delivering day to day, what I'm working towards? And that wasn't always important to me. But I think the older that I get, maybe I want to see the impact that I can make. I want to see my career goals aligned to wider, maybe goals within the local communities or within sort of the political situation in the UK at the moment. But also the main thing, and I think this is really important across the board, no matter what role you are in, be that in HR or any other role, then psychological safety is probably the biggest factor. Are you able to feel safe and listened to at work? Are you able to raise any concerns in a manner that isn't seen as aggressive or inappropriate? Are you able to confide in your line manager in a way that supports your growth and your values personally? And that's something I think that sometimes can be forgotten about. So you need to make sure it does live and breathe, and you need to make sure that no matter where you are within the organisation, you reflect on that and think, do I feel that I'm in an appropriate role in an appropriate organisation for me personally? And if the answer to that is no, that might be when you start thinking about, actually, how do I change that? How do I get something a bit different maybe?
Great, yeah, thank you. Right, well, Rover, I'll hand back to you. You can tell us what you value in work, and then carry on with the questions.
Perfect. I think all of the points that were shared were so real, being fairness, having the autonomy. I think autonomy is the one that resonated with me the hardest, because it's true, like someone said in the chat, we are human, we have our human needs, and we are there to do the work. So we know we'll be able to manage both. So for employers to have that trust in us and letting us balance things and giving us that autonomy to manage our life and manage work, I think that's really, really important. So great. I'm fully 100% on board with everything that was shared in the chat and all of your responses. And I think these are great responses. So thank you everyone for that. And moving forward, because we do have many more interesting questions for you. So the next one I think is a really important one on this topic is how to identify companies that genuinely value work-life balance. Because I think this is something that's thrown out a lot now, that work-life balance. But how do you identify these companies that actually help you do that? So Karima, do you want to kick off and tell us some tips?
Yeah, I think I'm naturally a more skeptical person. So I like to find evidence and to do my research. And I think the best way is to speak to people who are working in that business currently. Perhaps, they're not part of the interview process, but we've got LinkedIn and we can connect with these people and send them a DM, send them a message saying, hey, I'm interested in your organization. Could you take 5 minutes to just share your experience there? What have things been like? Of course, you can use things like Glassdoor as well to get a few insights there. But I think the best method that I've found personally for me when I've been job searching in the past and also speaking to other candidates is by speaking to people who work in that organization, because they are going to give you, a transparent picture of what things are really like. And of course, whenever you're looking at any job description or advertisement, everyone wants to say, oh, we're flexible work-life balance. But for me, the opinions of the people that actually work in that organization are the ones that are going to give me the best insight.
Wonderful. Yeah. The honest insight into what it actually is. Absolutely right. And Matthew, what practices do you think really show that balance is actually a part of the company culture?
So I think there's a few things. I mean, I'm quite skeptical also. And I think I'm mostly skeptical around things like Glassdoor or online reviews, because generally people tend to leave reviews if they're really happy or really unhappy. So you don't really get that middle ground. You don't really get any averages in there. And I'm quite data driven, so I take that with a pinch of salt. I think LinkedIn is a good starting place, but you need to increase your network. It's not just having people you're connected with and not doing anything with that. So are you actually building a network where you can ask questions? Are you directly messaging people, but not trying to sell them something? And I think LinkedIn can be a real positive with that, but also it might end up being a bit of a sales messaging situation. So to try and avoid that. So it's commenting on maybe an interesting article you've read. It's commenting on other people that are talking around work-life balance. It's seeing what are HR leaders within the UK talking about when it comes to that. What's the legislation looking like at the moment in regards to day one rights, for example? If you hear people saying something that you're interested in, have an opinion on it, because you never know who that person is. They might well be looking for somebody to work in a role that you're interested in. For me, talk to anyone that will listen to you. So it's scary to go and network with people. It's scary to go to events or to volunteer to speak at something or to do a new course, for example. But all of those things will only increase your network, which will allow you to meet people with similar interests. And I suppose my final point would be, if you are going through an application or interview process, think about what that organization's strategy is. So you want to know what the values of that organization are. If it's a values-led employer, it's likely they'll mention something about work-life balance or about maybe family-friendly policies, anything along those lines quite early on. So you can do your research. You can. I mean, Google's a dream sometimes to get a policy, particularly in public sector bodies. You'll be able to find maybe not the most recent version, but previous versions to see actually how flexible are people.
Wonderful. I think we've got some really practical tips there, whether it's going on LinkedIn, Glassdoor, and I love the fact that you pointed out that employers who really truly value it will mention it early on. So kind of looking out for those signs and those keywords about work-life balance and policies. So those are really great points. And we've got another question here that says, many roles in the current markets are stating that you need to be able to work in a fast-paced environment. What does this really mean? Tom, if you want to explain to us, what is this fast-paced environment?
Yeah, it's one of those catch-alls that a lot of people put in. I think what it reflects is businesses in the UK have never been leaner. There has never been so much expectations from businesses to meet their margins, to grow, to provide what they need to provide. And if you look back over the last 5-10 years, you've lost layers of bureaucracy within businesses. You've lost middle managers, you've lost support functions, especially in the public sector. So massively appreciate that the fact that a lot of support functions that existed 15 years ago just aren't there anymore. Equally, in the kind of global economic state we are at the moment, businesses are struggling. They need people to wear more than one hat. They need people to be able to contribute perhaps more than they just do. A lot of the business I speak to at the moment, I kind of always ask businesses like, what's your USP at the moment? What makes you guys special? And I'm hearing the word agility more and more and more. Businesses are succeeding by being agile, but that means being responsive, being flexible, being able to work in a fast-paced environment, in the fact that your direction might change 3 or 4 times a day, but that's what is like giving the success to those businesses. So it's not one thing. I would say it's more reflective of the kind of wider market at the moment, that every business is struggling from the top of the stock market right down to your kind of little businesses. Everybody needs more out of people, for better or for worse. Everybody works in a fast-paced environment now. So it's very much just an acknowledgement of that wider industry. All I would say, my kind of caveat on that is what they mean by that. An interview, a screening call is a two-way thing. If you see something on a job description or an advert and it says work in a fast-paced environment, ask them, what does a fast-paced environment look like in your company? What do you find people the challenges that they have in working in a fast-paced environment? Use your opportunity in these kind of processes to get one punch in for every 2 you get. You should be exploring it in both ways.
And I think that's really important, to treat it as a conversation rather than just being scared and just answering the question that the recruiter is asking, but to be able to have that conversation and get a clarity of what the role would look like. That's an excellent point. And Karima, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think it's quite standard sort of job description speak, to be honest, this language, isn't it? It's like when you see at the bottom of the job description, any other reasonable duties as required. It's just to kind of cover employers back to say, look, it's a busy period, this is a busy organisation. But I feel like busy and fast-paced, that does differ from organisation to organisation. You may join somewhere and then based on your prior work experience think, this is quite chilled compared to where I've worked before, but they describe themselves as fast-paced. So I think it also depends on the background that you're coming from. And also just trying to be positive about the fact that, they might say it's fast-paced, and like Tom was saying, you can ask questions to kind of gauge what that really means in that particular business. But just remembering that we have so many tools now in the way of AI and project management tools to combat that busyness or that fast-paced nature of the working world. And they're tools that we didn't have several years ago. So it's trying to also leverage the fact that these things are available to make us more productive and to combat this fast-paced nature of the working world.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think you guys have very well summarized what this word fast-paced environment means and how can one cope in these fast-paced environments. So being able to wear many hats, being agile, thinking on your feet. I think these are some of the key skills that we need to survive and thrive in this market now. So thank you so much. That was really great advices to hear from everyone. So we have a lot of interesting questions in the chat as well. So Zoe, do we want to go over the chat, or how do we think? Because there are lots of them, so it's going to take me time.
Yeah, I've pulled out a couple that I spotted. So let's start with this. So Caroline asks, how should a candidate feel about or respond to feedback that says, sorry, you're overqualified? In this market where there could be more job seekers than jobs, surely a well-qualified and experienced person is a win for the employer. Matthew, I wonder if this is something you've come across before, the kind of overqualified question.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's a slightly frustrating piece of feedback because it doesn't actually tell you anything. It tells you that maybe you've completed a course, or it may be that you've had a career at a certain level. For me, it could be, if you're getting that feedback often, it could be something to broach at interview stage and explain, I'm applying for this job, even though I might seem overqualified. My values align with the organisation, and X, Y, and Z are the reasons that I've applied. I would always welcome candidates coming back and maybe asking for a bit of clarification around that. You might not get a response. It depends how proactive the employer is. But if you're consistently getting told you're overqualified for a role, there's a couple of things that I would do. The first thing would be, are you applying for maybe entry-level jobs when you are very qualified? And if that's the case, you need to be able to justify why that is. If you're being invited into an interview, that would normally be the stage at which I would be looking at, are people overqualified for this, and maybe feeding back early or having that conversation early doors. That's not something that every employer does, because again, it's around, have we got capacity to make all these phone calls to do that? I would suggest, if I'm completely honest, if you're actually getting into an interview and being told that, it's a bit of a cop-out. And there might be another reason, but it's being masked slightly by the overqualified answer. So I would ask maybe for some more formal feedback. Is there anything that you identified as maybe areas I could improve in? Have you got time for a quick 5-minute phone call just to debrief on the back of that? But it's not feedback that I have ever given or would like to give somebody, because I see it as a real swerve from the truth, if I'm honest.
Great. Yeah, that's really interesting. Kind of a way of avoiding giving whatever feedback it is you want to give. And what about you, Tom? This must be something that you've come across.
Yes, it's something that we hear a lot. And I'll put my hands up and say I have given this feedback before. From the business perspective, a lot of that reads between the lines of, you're a risk to them. Are you applying for this job because you can't find something at your level, but in 3 months' time, when you have found something at a level, you're going to be straight out the door? Recruitment decisions are always risk-based. And if they've got 3 candidates, one has that risk that they could and should be doing something better in the eyes of the employer, it's hard to turn that away. If you're getting that feedback after interview a lot, I'm going to mirror a lot what Matthew says. There's probably something else there. Are you giving examples that are at a higher level that conveys that you should be doing more? If you're aware that you're kind of stepping down in your kind of career level, which is I wholly recommend people to do if they've got the chance to when they're seeking work, make sure you're using examples that are relevant to the level that you are applying for. One of the big things that we get feedback when they say, oh, they're overqualified, and we break it down, it's because they've been talking about a sales manager job that's turning over maybe 200 grand a year worth of sales, and they're giving examples in their career where they've done 20 million pounds in 6 different countries. It's not just that you're overqualified on paper. Have a reflect on what interview examples you're using. Are they actually relevant to the job and the level that you're applying for? Or are you potentially blowing somebody out of the water who's sat on the other side of the table who hasn't operated where you've been before? 100% you're a valuable addition to the team. And as the question starts, you are definitely a win to the company if you can give them the confidence that you fit in that hole. I don't think it's purely just you're overqualified on paper. If it's something you're regularly getting, have a think about those questions that you're answering. How are you answering? What examples are you using? What are you doing to reassure them that this isn't a stopgap until you find the right thing at the right level that you're looking for?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And the idea of being a risk to the company, I think is, it's hard to think about when you're the candidate, but I think that that is really like a big part of lots of these things is companies are thinking, oh, but they could leave, or oh, have they thought this bit through, that bit through? So I think, yeah, like they don't know you. It's always one of the things. So yeah, you might have done all the work thinking about taking that step down or whatever it is, but they don't know that that's the case. Great. So we had another question in the chat from Abhishek. So they say, should I leave my job as I'm currently working 65 to 72 hours a week? Now, I think the answer to that is only you can really answer that. But I guess I thought maybe it was interesting to hear from the panel. Are there any thoughts about kind of hours worked, what that looks like? Like, are there sort of things to think about when you're thinking about how many hours you want to be working in a week? Karima, shall we go to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to think about contractually how many hours are you engaged to be doing every week? How many hours have you been employed for? So if that is way above, your contractual hours, then there could be concerns, and there's a reason to ask why. And these are things that should be flagged, with your manager as and when they're happening. You shouldn't really wait until a long time has passed. It's good for the manager to receive feedback that you are doing this overtime or having to work additional hours to get the job done, so that yourself and the manager can delve into why that is happening. Because obviously, there are times where it's busier at work and you do a bit extra, but if it's consistent and it's happening every week, then it's a bit of a red flag as to whether the workload is adequate and suitable for the role and the contractual hours. So it's important to flag for sure. Obviously, it's the person's decision at the end of the day as to what they do. But I think definitely raising that with their manager and their employer. If they decide to leave, that's their choice, but also whilst they are there, just making it more manageable in the meantime is really, really important, because as we know with job search, it can take a while. So it's important to have that stamina and that energy outside of work, so you can fuel that into your job search.
Yeah, great. Thank you. No, that's really helpful. And Rova, have you got a couple more questions? I think we've probably got time if you want to run through. Have you got questions 6 and 7 on your list?
I think there's questions about a very important theme that was raised again and again throughout our conversation as well: burnout from job seeking. So I think this is really important, and like Karima just said, you need to have that stamina outside work as well. So I think we'd love to hear from our panel about how do you deal with this burnout, how to avoid it, and how do you actually succeed in landing a role. So if we start with Tom.
Yeah, burnout in job seekers are difficult because we always talk about burnout from work. But I think what a lot of people forget is job seeking is work. It's not something you do for fun. It's not something that you do because you want to. Job seeking is work whilst you're not working. I think one of the big things that we reflect on, is feedback I give to people a lot, is take the time down. If you've hit a wall, take a few days off. Something that I am a big advocate for not is don't go on LinkedIn and start ruining that personal brand that we've talked about before and saying, I'm burnout, I'm not getting it, I'm banging my head against a brick wall. Reach out to your network for support, but try and keep yourself positive. At least that personal brand positive. Go home, tell everybody about it, have a bad day at home. Remember, your LinkedIn is essentially, it's your sales tool. That is what a lot of people look at first. And it is challenging enough already returning to work after a break or when you've been job seeking for a while. But when your application hits somebody's inbox and they go on your LinkedIn and they see half a dozen posts about you being quite negative about job searching, and it is that initial viewpoint that people will see and make decisions about on you. So 100% have a bad day. You need to have bad days in work, you need to have bad days job seeking, and you will get burnt out at times. Everybody does in their own ways to different levels. I think how and where you manage it is the most important. And remember, it's not a sprint. You can't apply for jobs quicker. You can't do more quicker. Give it a set amount of time and give your job seeking some structure. Say, right, I'm going to do 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon. There is no point sat looking at LinkedIn for 8 hours a day, applying for stuff in the first 2 minutes that comes up, because you just get yourself into a headspace where you're not going to be the best when the right opportunity comes up. So give yourself some structure. Remember that LinkedIn and your CV is your sales tool, and enjoy some downtime. You don't always have the chance to be off work. I know it is frustrating when you've been out of work for a while, but go for a walk in the day, go walk your dog, go and have that opportunity that you might not have in 6 months' time when you're working full time again, to go and enjoy being out and about.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, to be patient and almost treat job seeking as a job as well, and don't work overtime on that so you don't get burnt out. And Matthew, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very easy, if you're not being successful in your job seeking, to sometimes think applying for 16 jobs in a day is enough, because it's really easy to click apply all and send your CV to a load of people. For me, that isn't really job seeking. That's spamming. That's flyering people to hope that something might happen. I would much rather hear about somebody who's applied for 2 jobs but tailored their application appropriately, maybe written a really good cover letter for that role potentially. And that for me would mean you've put the effort in, and therefore you can reward yourself for that reason. On the back of that, it depends what level the role's at. Some roles require a lot more information. It might be a cover letter, it might be a project in the lead up to an interview, which takes time. Others may well be they just want a CV, which also is a lot easier to do. So it's not a one size fits all. What I would say is give yourself some weekly goals. If you're looking week in, week out on applying for roles, how are you finding those roles? Put a limit there and say, well, maybe this week I'd like to find 5 really suitable roles which match my values, and have a plan about how you're going to do that. Not every job is going to be on LinkedIn or on Indeed or on Total Jobs. There are very niche websites out there. In the charity world, there's charityjob.co.uk, which advertises only on there a lot of the time. Guardian Jobs is very good for HR jobs. Obviously, the CIPD has a website itself around HR jobs. But for me, think about, if you see a job that you like, think about reaching out directly to that organisation. There will be recruiters working for that organisation, but agency people that are on the call might not hear it. There is a cost if you use an agency, and if you avoid using an agency and directly recruit, it saves the organisation money. So what are you going to lose from sending a CV directly with a nice cover letter to a recruiter whose name you know from the website? Not a lot. You might get declined, but you might get through that first round. You might get an interview on the back of it. So for me, it's thinking outside the box a little bit about going, LinkedIn isn't enough. Apply all isn't enough. What am I doing to work my way around the barriers that I have maybe found previously?
Yeah, I think it's really important to identify these barriers that we often don't think of. For example, it's a really good point about understanding when to send a CV to a recruiter versus an agency. I think that's a really important one as well. And thank you for sharing all those websites, the niche ones as well. I think it's really important to know that and be strategic. Maybe search job sites that are specific to your industry. I think that's a really important one as well. Sometimes we just go on LinkedIn because it's popular, but then we do miss out on jobs that are on the niche sites. So I think that was a great point as well. Thank you. Thank you all. Perfect.
Great. Right. Well, I think we're probably at the wrapping up stage. So I guess it just leaves me to thank everyone for attending. And I guess we would be great to hear from the panel kind of one thing you want people to take away from today. Should we start with Karima?
Yeah, it's kind of linked to the last question, actually, but just for people to just be specific and strategic with their job search. You know, try to do things that will make your life as easy as possible, because it is tiring looking for work. It is frustrating. And as Tom was saying, sometimes you might just need to take a walk, but you can do things to make your life easier, whether it's having a master CV so that you're not having to create multiple versions of your CV each time, where you can tweak just little points, whether it's going to networking events. So, you know, that is a form of job seeking or job searching that will feel different mentally to sitting at a computer and filling out some sort of application, and also doing things that are a bit outside of the box. You know, I'm a big advocate for that, and I think that that's helped me to be successful in the past. Even doing things like video cover letters, Not many people are doing them, but if you're that candidate that goes that extra mile and you think, well, how can I really attract someone's attention and, where are my gap in my CV, but actually I'm going to proactively mention that in this video and tell them why I'm the best candidate for this role, the skill set that I bring, you're going to stand out and they'll see that you're unique. So just being strategic and thinking about methods that you can use that are a bit outside of the box, I think is really, really helpful for any candidate looking for work at the moment.
Great, thank you. I'm not sure about the video cover letters. That slightly makes my blood run cold, but I guess if you've got the wherewithal to do that, that's fantastic. Yeah. Matthew, what do you want people to take away?
So for me, there's a few hints, I suppose, for applications and for interviews specifically that I think are probably relevant. So in any organisation, impact is the main key when being interviewed, I think. How do you demonstrate that? So if you can throw out some figures, some figures regarding the impact that you've made from an HR perspective, I suppose it might be how many cases do you manage if you're an ER specialist, how you've reduced turnover of your organisation. Those sorts of things are quite important, I think, for HR roles. But the themes and trends that come up day in, day out for me are people being able to demonstrate their values at interview stage or via a cover letter or via a CV potentially. To demonstrate empathy in some way, shape or form. Empathy is incredibly important to all organisations. Obviously, I'm from the charity sector, so it's something that we live and breathe. But I think if you mention empathy and understanding in any interview, then that's probably going to be a good thing. And the final one is being able to identify and demonstrate resilience. And it's been a tumultuous few years for everyone. I think if we look back at the last 5 years, lots of things have happened socially, politically, where people have had to become more resilient. And that must equate to people's work lives as well. Everyone has had some hard times, and particularly reading the chat today, there's quite a lot going on out there. So how do you demonstrate that you have the resilience to make those difficult decisions, or to be involved in difficult conversations, or to be able to, for want of a better phrase, sleep well at night outside of work? Because we want good people who do understand work-life balance, who can get away from the day-to-day and maybe not have to go off sick, or might not have impacting their mental health, those sorts of things. So for me, if you can demonstrate resilience at any stage of application or interviewing, all the better at this time in life, really.
Great, yeah, that's really interesting. I haven't really heard that before about demonstrating how resilient you are. And finally, Tom, what do you want people to take away?
I mean, the main thing, and this is something I see on a daily basis, is a rejection isn't saying that you can't do the job that you've applied for. A rejection isn't turning around and saying you're not capable, or you're not good enough, or you can't do what you've applied for. All it is saying is you didn't win that race. Like you look at the Olympics, 12 people at a time go and run the 2,000 meter race. One of them's going to win. I think that job seeking is in lots of individual races. You're never going to win every single one. A lot of people, especially when you've been through a really intense interview process, you've had 3 or 4 interviews, you've been to site, you've met people, you've fallen in love with it, you know where you're going to park your car, and then you're not that person that crosses the line first. It is really deflating, and you think, oh, I'm not good enough. If you are getting to good interviews, if you're getting through interview stages, you are the right kind of person. People don't make it into interview processes, and especially far down the line, unless they are the right kind of person. You just didn't win that race. If anything, it's more encouraging to get a few second stages and not get there, because you know you're interviewing for the right kind of jobs. Alternatively, if you're not getting final down the interview line, then perhaps you're running in the wrong race. And I think it is something to really reflect on. Is you've kind of got to think that I'm in a pool of people here. Am I in the right pool? Do I need to be looking at a different level, a different type of company, a different type of role? That you are never going to be the only person that applies for a role. You're never going to be the only person that the recruiter or the agency or the hiring manager speaks to. It's about crossing that line first, but making sure that it's right for you and right for them. I'm a bit of a cliche that I do think everything happens for a reason. I do think people end up in their right place eventually, and it's got to feel right. But no, rejections aren't rejections, and please make sure you're running the right race.
Yeah, I think getting in that right headspace about rejections is absolutely key. I think, that can spiral you off into the worst places. But if you can try and get a grip on it and think, oh, just that wasn't for me that time, that's definitely the right way to approach things. Well, thank you all so much for all your insights. It's been super interesting and really great to hear from kind of different perspectives around the recruitment process, and whether that's in-house, internal, agency, that kind of what's going on out there in terms of the job market. I can see we're getting lots of people clapping in the chat, so that's great. Thank you all for speaking. Thank you, Reva, for co-chairing. That's really helpful. And thank you everyone for attending, and best of luck with your job search. Take care.